With variable height mode in reform text, you can create wonderfully expressive type like this by changing the height as it flows along the path. You can do this by turning on the Show Markers checkbox in the panel, and by default there's a height marker on either end of the path. And when I select one by clicking on it, it turns red, and we can see the height is displayed in the panel in the height field. And you can change this numerically, or you can select a height marker and pull it up and down to change the text. Here's another example with text sitting on a straight line with multiple height markers creating this hilly effect. You can select multiple height markers at once by dragging a marquee or holding Shift, and then in the panel you can enter the size into the height field to change all of them at once. To reset the height markers, go up to the Flyout menu and choose Delete Height Markers, and this sets your text back to a uniform height. Now I'll go back to the first example, and we'll add some height markers to this text. When you hover over the path, you'll see a plus sign appear by the cursor, then just click and drag up. And like anything having to do with paths in Illustrator, it's best to use no more of these than you need for the smoothest results. You can delete a height marker individually by double-clicking on it. Now I'll switch to another text example, and we'll look at the row of buttons that control the height markers. First, I'll make this text taller in the middle and lower on the end here. Then I'll select the middle height marker, it turns red, and then I'll go back to the panel and click on the first button. And we can see it's converted now from a smooth marker to a sharp marker, which creates a sharper change in the height. I'll click the button again to switch back and forth so you can see the difference from sharp to smooth. And this button is also an indicator, so when you select a point, you can see the button is darkened for sharp markers, and it's neutral when your selected marker is smooth. Now the middle marker is currently selected, and I can use this second button to delete it. Now I'll vary the height a little more. And we'll look at the third button, and this mirrors the selected marker, so it's flipped across the path. And you can see it only does this with the markers you have selected. And the next button swaps the position of all the markers at once, whether they're selected or not. And for this, I'll change the alignment to Justify and Scale. Now the text is filling the whole path, and when I swap the markers, it's more dramatic. And then the last button reverses the direction of the text, regardless of the marker selection. Below the height buttons, we have the acceleration controls, which affect the horizontal distortion of the text. And you can use these to give a three-dimensional look to your text. First, I'll take a single line of text and add a return to make it into two lines. And then, the first acceleration button is the default, with no acceleration applied, so you can use this as a reset. Next, we have Ease In, and then Ease Out. Ease In stretches the left side of the text, compressing it on the right side. And Ease Out does the opposite, compressing on the left and stretching on the right. And I can control the rate using this widget and handle to moderate how much of the text is being stretched and compressed, so now it's a little more natural looking. And now the text looks like it's coming from the distance and moving into the foreground. The next two buttons create an effect that's compressed on either end and stretched in the middle. And then in the widget, we have two handles. This allows you to adjust the amount of stretching, and it gives the effect that the text is moving away from us on either end. So you could use this for conforming text to a cylindrical object. Now we'll look at an example that uses acceleration along with a few other settings to conform text to a dimensional object. First, I have my text and a path on the knapsack. I'll select them both and click Make. Now I'll use the vertical checkbox so we can apply a uniform angle to all the characters, and I'm just changing the angle to 80 degrees to give it a bit of lean. And they'll look more like they're on the bag surface. And then I'll set the baseline to the descenders and add a little offset to move the type closer to the text above. And I also want to scale this up, so I'm adding just a little bit of scaling. And then I'll click on Right Align to shift it over a bit. Next, I'll turn on the height markers, and I'll select the one on the right and just make its height a little bit shorter so that the text starts to recede and wrap around the knapsack. And then finally, we'll use acceleration, clicking on the Ease In button, and then I'll adjust the handle to moderate that a bit. And with just those subtle tweaks, we created some realism, and it's all editable. Now we'll wrap up our tour of the panel by looking at the Flyout menu. We've already seen that we can use delete height markers to reset our text, and we can also save and manage height profiles that can be applied to other text, like you can do with Astute Graphics Reform. And finally, we have preferences, where you can change the color of the height markers and the path highlight, and you can turn the path preview thickness off and on. So now that we've seen all the options on the panel, in the next video, we'll look at a workflow for making circular text on a path.